The strongest stratagem in the entire game that you're almost certainly using wrong. Well, some of you might be getting it right, but I'm going to make sure that everyone's going to be using this stratagem correctly. One of the things that people in Warhammer 40,000 forget all the time is that you have what's called generic stratagems, something that's accessible to every single army out there. And I promise that the majority of players out there are ignoring and just not utilizing these things to their main strengths. So I'm going to talk about one in particular today, the heroic intervention, and we are going to get better at Warhammer 40,000 together today in this video. So guys, heroic intervention is a 1 CP stratagem, and most people don't quite understand. Well, most people get this part, but some people tend to forget that you can use it on almost any unit. It doesn't have to be a character unit that uses the stratagem. That is a hangover of 9th edition that people still have in their heads for some reason. So first off, you can use a heroic intervention on any unit in the game that is not a non-walker vehicle. So walker vehicles, dreadnoughts, baby knights, things like that can heroic, but tanks can not. Those are the only units that cannot use the heroic intervention, outside of obviously Battleshock units. So there are going to be a couple different reasons, 6 that I have here, that are specifically designed, or 6 reasons to actually utilize the heroic intervention stratagem, and I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to show you an example of how it was set up, and you're going to become masters of the heroic intervention itself. When you use this stratagem, whew, boy, you're going to win. So let's get into it. I'm going to answer one quick question to clarify about the heroic that I just see everyone screw up. So here it is. When you do a heroic intervention, you do not get the fight bonus for charging. And most people are confused by what the fight bonus means. So the fight bonus is a very specifically clarified thing in the rules commentary, and I have it posted for you right here. And it's on page 19 of the rules commentary if you want to read it. Charge bonus, bestowed on a unit that makes a charge move, so that until the end of the turn, that unit has the fight's first ability. Note that other rules and abilities that trigger when a unit makes a charge move, or in the turn that a unit has charged, are not part of the charge bonus. So if you have Lance, if you get sustained or lethal when you charge, if you get to Battleshock your opponent when you charge, those are not the charge bonus. The charge bonus that you don't get when you heroically intervene specifically is defined, and it is the fight's first ability. So you do not get the fight's first ability when you do a heroic intervention charge like you would doing a normal charge. However, you would get all other benefits, bonuses, whatever that you could possibly get from charging, whether that's going to be mortals on the charge, lethal hits, sustained hits, lance, whatever. Anything else that would proc off of you making a charge, you still get when you heroically intervene. I just hear people confuse this all the time, and they tell me I'm wrong. But here it is, guys. It's page rules 19 of the rules commentary, and that's it in black and white for you to read, and yellow and green, I guess. All right, now let's talk about the ways to heroically intervene and how to utilize the heroic intervention. The first one is going to be fights first. If you have an innate fights first ability, let's say a Justiciar from the Space Marines, he doesn't need, you don't get the fights first from doing the heroic intervention, but since the unit already has the fights first ability, this is going to still allow you to keep that fights first ability, making it very challenging for your opponent. So if your opponent charges a unit and you were to heroically intervene, remember the way you heroically intervene is that your opponent ends a charge move within 6 inches of your unit. You can spend a CP to then roll a charge into them. You would make the charge, you would fight first, because the way that fighting activates in this game is that you have a fights first step and then you have a fights normal step. The players alternate who fights, but it starts with the non-active player. So if you charge, you get the fights first ability, but I charge in I heroically intervene with my Justiciar leading Blade Guard veterans. I also have the fights first ability, but it's your turn, meaning I am the non-active player and my fights first unit, my Justiciar Blade Guard vets, would attack first. So this is the simplest, easiest, obvious way to make use of heroic intervention. You can use this to guard your units. You can use this to bait your opponent into charging an easy target, but then you heroic and you murder them. There's lots of ways that you can do this. This messes up the purpose of charging in the first place. A lot of times, if your opponent wanted to charge just one unit, but they happen to be within 6 inches of your Justiciar, you can heroic in, or your Blade Guard veteran squad, I mean, then you could still heroic in, murder them, and basically there was no point in them charging at all because they don't even get to fight. Assuming you killed them all with your fights first. Like if you didn't kill them, then of course they would still fight. All right, so fights first is the first reason to use heroic. Let's talk about the second one. This is the Pilein Disrupt. Now this is one that I use all the time. So I have built a little diagram for you. When a little background information that you need to understand this. On Pilein rules, you must end closer to the closest enemy model when you pile in, and you have to base if you can. So what happens if you use a good heroic intervention, you can completely disrupt an opponent who is planning on piling in to get their maximum attacks. So I've made a little chart here, a little, I don't know, picture here for you. So if I've got the 6 Sanguinary Guard and I am charged by 6 8-bound or Exalted 8-bound or whatever, my opponent is planning on using his pile-in to actually get everyone engaged. So like this first model who's here is going to pile into the Sanguinary Guard, and then the others are going to pile in to get base to base with the first 8-bound, and they're going to then use all their attacks and just try to kill all the Sanguinary Guard. In this particular example, I heroic intervened with a Sanguinor, but you could have done it with any unit in the army. And now that the Sanguinor is where he is, he'll fight first, but after he's done fighting, all of the Exalted 8-bound or the normal 8-bound or whatever they are, they have to end their pile-in move closer to the closest enemy model. So if you see, all of the 8-bound, except for the one who is currently engaged with the 6-man squad of Sanguinary Guard, are closer to the Sanguinor, which means every pile-in move they make has to end closer or /and base to base if possible with the Sanguinor, which means this squad can only get one guy to attack the Sanguinary Guard, which completely neuters the damage they were about to do. It also gives the Sanguinary Guard the ability to survive and hit back much harder. So this really screws the World Eaters player in this example when you do this heroic intervention. I've shown this in the past where I will heroic intervene with like Gretchen into Wardens to kind of stop Wardens from being able to pile in or something like that. You can do this in any army in the game, and it's always very valuable. All right, so let's talk about the number 3 reason to do a heroic intervention. If you have like a Battleshock style rule, this you could also say this would any rule that procs off of heroically intervening. So if you're a jump pack assault intercessors and you heroically intervene, you can actually do mortal wounds when you do that before your opponent even gets to hit, which is kind of crazy. If you have Dante, for example, Dante can heroically intervene, and the chapter master of the Blood Angels, and he's just an example. There's lots of units that can do things like this. He's got an aura of 6 inches around him. The enemy units must take a battle check at -1 at the start of the fight phase. This can be utilized to do a lot of things. It can say, hey, if you fail your battle shock, great. Now you can't use any stratagems to buff your damage. Now you can't use any stratagems to protect yourself from me. Now you have no OC, so you weren't able to storm this hostile objective. Now you have no OC, so you can't score secure no man's land. Now you have no OC, so you can't score area deny. All these things, right? So you can use your battle shock mechanism very, very offensively in the context of a heroic intervention, and it can be exceptionally powerful. Here's the OC steal. So I made another chart here. You can use heroic interventions to get primary in your next turn. So in this example, Angron has charged a unit of Beast Snagas led by Beast Boss, and Angron is going to wipe this squad. He's going to kill him, no problem. But being the clever orc I am, I'm going to go ahead and heroically intervene with my Gretchen. So now that my Gretchen have based and they are touching Angron, I have more OC than Angron does with both my Gretchen squad and my Beast Snaga squad. So when Angron kills my Beast Snagas, which he probably will, I will still have enough OC that I'm going to hold the objective in my turn. So in this scenario, I use my heroic intervention simply to guarantee that I'm going to score primary. You can combine this very, very well with your Pilein Disrupt that we spoke about earlier. Because it'll really mess with your target priorities. So, for example, if I'm here, I could have heroically intervened Gretchen, or let's first pretend that these are Orc Knobs and not Sanguinary Guard. I could have heroically intervened with Gretchen in order to steal an objective that I may have been on, if I were on an objective, right? So you can combine this with the OC steal to get fantastic results, which will really mess with your opponents. It also can mess with the target priority, like I was talking about. So what if Angron goes, oh no, all these Gretchen have all this OC, and then they're going to be able to give my opponent extra CP in his turn. Maybe I need to attack the Gretchen. It could really screw with their prioritization of what they think they need to do when they actually allocate attacks. So that's number 4 is your OC steal. Number 5, we got 2 more, guys. Free freaking movement. This is such a big deal. A lot of times people don't grasp how powerful heroically intervening is, even if you don't think you need to. Let's say in this diagram, for example, he has 3 8-bound. They're going to charge my JPI. I can heroically intervene this big Sanguinary Guard squad, and I can go ahead and jump them to give myself an additional 10 inches of movement. So now they're going to heroically intervene. the exalted 8-bout or the 8-bout or whatever die, but now in my turn, I'm 10 inches further up the battlefield than I would have been had I not heroically intervened. So I'm actually using the heroic intervention in this scenario to get extra movement. Interestingly enough, I'm also using it to steal a objective, and I'm also using it to activate a Battleshock in this mechanism, seeing as it's Dante's. So there are lots of ways that you can combine these reasons to heroically intervene. And then lastly, bait/charge blocking. So this could be a little bit confusing. So what I did is I made two pictures for you. So you can actually use your models to stop other charges from your opponent. You can also bait charges your opponent would not have tried otherwise. So what do I mean by this? Well, if we look at this picture on the right here, we've got Angron, and he's going to be next to some 8-bound. We've got a truck, and then we've got a unit of Breakaboys on the objective, and then we've got a unit of Gretchen that are highlighted in red. Now, if my opponent charges his 8-bound and he wants to kill the truck, one thing I can do here is I can actually heroically intervene with my Gretchen, which I've done, right? And this actually is now blocking Angron's charge into the Breakaboys, which can really screw with target prioritization. Now, I can already hear people typing and saying, oh, but your opponent should just charge in the right order. Well, you're not wrong. They should charge in the right order. But guess what? Every single person makes mistakes. I have never played a game where I didn't make a mistake, and I have never played a game against anyone who has not made a mistake. Doesn't matter if I'm playing John Lennon. Doesn't matter if I'm playing the local guy down at the gaming store. Every single person makes mistakes, and heroically intervening is one of the ways that you can take advantage of those mistakes. So, with that, guys, this was heroic interventions, how to set it up, how to use it. This will make you a much better player because you can use it to have fights first to kill your opponent before they can kill you. You can use it to Pilein Disrupt all their activations to really screw up their plans. You can use it to cause battle shocks to mess up secondaries and stratagem usage. You can use OC Steal in order to just steal primary. Free movement, awesome, and then you can block charges with it as well. Heroic Intervention is an amazing stratagem. If you're not using it, you need to be using it more. Always be thinking about it in the game. With that, I'm going to leave you for today. Hope this was a good one. If it was, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and until next time, crump on. Bye-bye.